The nice guy lives in a constant war within himself. On one hand, he tries so hard to embody selflessness, always putting others first, always showing purity and kindness, hoping this will make him worthy of love and respect. But beneath that mask, there's often a deep self-hate, a voice filled with negative self-talk that whispers he's never good enough. This voice is like a hidden shadow, a force that grows stronger the more he denies his own instincts, desires, and needs. He feels trapped between wanting to be good and an overwhelming sense of guilt and shame for simply being human, for having natural passions and imperfections. What makes this struggle even harder is that society seems to reward this fake niceness. From a young age, many are taught that to be a good person, you must suppress your ego, forget about self-interest, and constantly give, even when you're empty. But the conscience of the nice guy becomes twisted. Instead of being a guide for real morality, it turns into a whip that punishes him for every thought or feeling that doesn't fit this ideal. Every sexual desire, every burst of anger, every moment of ambition is met with fear. What if I'm a bad person for feeling this? And so, the self-image he builds is one that denies his full human nature. This is why many nice guys secretly resent themselves and others. They look calm and caring on the outside, but are burning with envy, fear, and anxiety inside. They want to be loved for who they are. But how can anyone love them if they're never honest about what they feel? This is where emotional honesty and humility are missing. Because when you live to please others, you lose touch with what you really want. Instead of facing their desire, they pretend it doesn't exist, and that lie feeds the shadow, making the inner conflict worse. Culture often reinforces this behavior, praising them for being too nice, while ignoring the deep personal growth they actually need. A nice guy often can't say no, even when he wants to. He sacrifices his self-interest in relationships, work, and friendships, but then feels used, ignored, or invisible. The truth is, behind all this effort to appear selfless, there's a hidden hope that if they give enough, people will finally see them, love them, and take care of their needs. But Jung would say that's the shadow working, because by refusing to acknowledge their instincts and anima, they create an inner split that leads to self-loathing. And when the world doesn't reward them for being nice, the anger turns inward. That's when self-hate grows and keeps them trapped in a vicious cycle. But here's what most people don't realize. Behind every nice guy, there's a powerful human being waiting to be freed. Someone full of passions, desires, and real self-empowerment. The key is not to destroy that caring side, but to stop pretending to be only that. To embrace both their ego and their soul, and realize that morality doesn't mean living in constant guilt and fear. It means being whole, accepting both light and shadow. And to do that, they'll have to face what's been hiding inside, the very shadow they've tried so hard to deny. And this brings us right to one of Jung's most powerful ideas: how denying your shadow actually makes it grow stronger until it controls you from within. Chapter 1: The Shadow and the Creation of Opposites. Carl Jung taught that whenever we try too hard to be pure and good, we inevitably create a hidden opposite inside, the shadow. And this is exactly what happens with a nice guy. The more he pushes down his instincts, his desires, and even his natural sexual desire, the more a dark counterpart grows stronger inside him. It's like trying to keep a beach ball underwater. The harder you push, the more forcefully it wants to explode to the surface. By chasing an image of perfect selflessness and purity, he's actually giving birth to something wild and destructive, a shadow made of repressed anger, envy, and fear. And the tragic part? He's not even aware that this is happening. When a person is obsessed with being good, They lose contact with their instincts, and that creates a dangerous split inside. On one side, there's the fake self-image of the nice guy, always polite, always smiling. On the other side, hidden deep, is the anti-self, filled with self-hate, negative self-talk, and secret passions that scare him. Jung showed that this split is what makes people feel so anxious and torn. You can't be whole if half of you is locked away like a criminal. The moment you pretend that desire, ambition, and even anger are bad parts that need to be erased, you start fighting a war inside yourself. A war you will always lose. The more the shadow grows, the more powerful and vicious the negative self-talk becomes. Suddenly, the nice guy finds himself tortured by an inner voice that calls him weak, fake, or unworthy. He might try harder to be nice, thinking this will silence the voice, but it only makes it worse. Why? Because he's feeding the very conscience that is now corrupted, transformed into an inner tyrant. Nietzsche called this the bad conscience, when we turn our natural instincts into something evil and start punishing ourselves for being human. So instead of guiding us toward real morality, the conscience becomes a source of endless self-loathing and fear of being exposed. This is why people who seem too nice often explode in unexpected ways. They spend years pretending they have no anger, no desire, no ego, until one day, the shadow takes control. Suddenly, they act out, maybe through passive-aggressive behavior, maybe through addiction, maybe through secret envy of people who live freely. And the worst part is, they don't even know why they're doing it. Because when you suppress instincts long enough, they don't go away. They grow in the dark, waiting to break out. This is why emotional honesty is so crucial, because denying desire doesn't make you moral, it makes you unstable. If a person wants real personal growth, they have to face the shadow head-on. They need to realize that selflessness without boundaries leads to resentment. That purity without understanding human instincts leads to hypocrisy. And that real spiritual growth means integrating the shadow, not pretending it doesn't exist. This is what Jung called individuation, becoming whole by accepting all parts of yourself, not just the parts that win approval. And if someone has the courage to take that step, they'll finally understand why denying their instincts has kept them trapped, which is exactly what we'll explore next: the danger of living cut off from our natural drives. Chapter 2. The Dangers of Denying Instincts. Denying instincts is one of the fastest ways to create a life filled with quiet desperation. When a person tries to cut off their natural desire, sexual desire, or anger, they think they're being good, but what they're really doing is creating a deep fracture inside themselves. Nietzsche described this as the birth of the bad conscience, a system where you turn your natural drives into enemies. You become a prisoner of your own mind, torn between what you want and what you think you should be. And the longer you play this game, the more you feed self-hate, negative self-talk, and endless cycles of anxiety and fear. It's like building a cage inside yourself and locking away your own power. Many nice guys fall into this trap because they think morality means killing their instincts. But let's be real. Can you truly love others if you secretly resent them for having what you deny yourself? Can you be genuinely selfless if you're secretly burning with envy and repressed desire? Of course not. Suppressing your ego doesn't make you pure. It makes you fake. And when you live like this, culture often rewards your fake smile, but inside, you feel like a fraud. The truth is, emotional honesty and humility are impossible when you're lying to yourself about what you feel. Personal growth begins when you stop pretending and start accepting your full humanity. Another danger of denying instincts is that it destroys real self-empowerment. If you cut yourself off from passions like ambition, sexual desire, or even healthy anger, you lose the very fire that drives life forward. You can't protect yourself, pursue your dreams, or stand up for what matters if you believe your own strength is bad. This is why so many people live small, limited lives, not because they lack talent, but because they are terrified of their own power. They fear what might happen if they embrace their desire and ego. But Jung and Nietzsche both knew that only by accepting these drives can you become whole. Because individuation requires the full embrace of who you are. And here's something practical. When people suppress instincts, they often develop chronic anxiety, fear, and self-hate. These are signals from the psyche saying, hey, you're cutting off something essential. So if you're constantly anxious, exhausted, or angry for no reason, ask yourself, what natural part of me am I denying? Maybe it's sexual desire. Maybe it's ambition. Maybe it's a hunger for freedom or respect. The way to heal is not to fight these instincts, but to integrate them, to give them a place in your life where they can serve, not sabotage. And that's the first step to building real emotional maturity and personal growth. But if embracing instincts is essential, how do we do it without becoming selfish or out of control? How do we honor our natural drives and still live with morality and conscience? The answer is balance. And yes, that balance starts by accepting that self-interest is not a sin. In fact, without a healthy dose of self-interest, you can't survive, thrive, or give anything real to others. So now it's time to explore what most people are too afraid to say. Why selfishness, in its right form, is necessary for a strong, authentic life. Chapter 3. The Necessity of Selfishness. Here's the truth nobody wants to admit. Selfishness, when understood properly, is necessary for real personal growth and emotional maturity. The nice guy spends his life running from his own self-interest, thinking that being selfless means never asking for anything, never wanting anything. But what does that create? A person who is disconnected from his instincts, full of resentment, and silently angry at the world for not giving back what he refuses to claim. You can't build a real identity if you're always living for others. You need a healthy relationship with desire, with your ego, with your passions. Otherwise, you become a ghost, invisible even to yourself. Now, let's be clear. When I say selfishness, I don't mean arrogance or cruelty. I mean honoring your instincts, respecting your own needs, and acting in a way that supports your self-empowerment. You can't give love if you hate yourself. You can't be generous if you're empty inside. And you certainly can't have real humility if you're constantly lying about what you want. Healthy selfishness means knowing when to say no, when to set boundaries, when to pursue ambition, and when to honor your own desire. It's about acting from emotional honesty, not guilt or fake morality that only keeps you weak. Most people don't realize that self-interest is what builds a strong self-image. When you dare to go after what you want, whether it's sexual desire, career success, or simple personal growth, you begin to see yourself as worthy, capable, and alive. And that's when others start respecting you too. People can feel when you are aligned with your instincts, when you move with purpose and authenticity. This is why embracing your self-interest makes you more trustworthy, not less. Because now you're acting out of strength, not hidden agendas. And isn't that what culture desperately lacks? People who are strong enough to be honest about who they are. Think about how many nice guys try to hide their desires in relationships. They act like they don't want anything, just to avoid rejection. But what happens? They come off as fake, weak, and dishonest because deep down, everyone knows they want something but are too scared to say it. Real attraction is built on transparency, on being bold enough to own your instincts and share them with courage. And this applies to all areas of life: work, family, love. People respect those who respect themselves. And respecting yourself starts by embracing self-interest without shame, seeing it as part of your human nature. So if selfishness is a key to becoming whole, how do you integrate it without letting it take over? How do you stay true to your ego and desire, but also live with conscience and humility? The answer lies in embracing instincts wisely, in seeing them not as enemies to be fought, but as allies in your journey of individuation and spiritual growth. And once you understand that, you'll see why instincts are not something to fear, but something to work with. And that's exactly where we're heading next. Chapter 4. Embracing the instincts for personal growth. If there's one thing Jung was clear about, it's that true personal growth only happens when you stop running from your instincts and start embracing them as part of who you are. You can achieve real individuation, that full integration of the self, by cutting pieces of yourself out and throwing them away. Your desire, your sexual desire, your anger, even your ambition, they all hold energy that's essential for your growth. When you reject these parts, you don't become better. You become weaker, fragmented. The secret is to integrate these forces, to work with them, and let them serve your spiritual growth instead of fighting them as if they're enemies. The process of embracing instincts is about emotional honesty, admitting that, yes, you want things, you feel things, you're human. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's the beginning of self-realization. When you acknowledge your passions, you start to understand yourself, and that gives you personal power. You stop pretending to be some perfect, pure being and accept that your shadow, the part of you that holds all these instincts, is also part of your soul. And ironically, when you own this shadow, it loses control over you. Instead of being ruled by hidden fears and negative self-talk, you become conscious and in charge of your own inner world. One way to work with your instincts is to explore them in a safe, conscious way. For example, if you've denied your sexual desire, try journaling honestly about what you feel without judgment. If you've been suppressing anger, try physical outlets like martial arts or intense workouts where that energy can move through you without harming anyone. These are real tools for emotional maturity. And if ambition has been buried under years of pretending you don't care about success, allow yourself to dream again. Write down goals that excite you. Because culture may shame these instincts, but without them, there's no fire, no life, no real self-empowerment. Also, embracing instincts is not about giving in to every impulse. It's about transformation. You take the raw energy of desire, envy, fear, and you shape it into something higher. This is what it means to spiritualize your passions, to turn what seems base and raw into fuel for growth. For example, envy can show you what you secretly want and inspire you to go after it. Fear can show you where you need to grow stronger. Anger can reveal where your boundaries have been crossed. Instead of rejecting these emotions, emotional honesty lets you learn from them and use them to become a fuller, stronger person. And here's the beauty of it. When you embrace your instincts, people feel that authenticity. You stop being a nice guy, hiding behind a mask, and you become someone real, someone grounded in human nature, unafraid of who they are. And that's what makes people attractive, charismatic, and powerful. Not fake purity, but realness. Because when you know yourself, when you face your shadow, you walk through life with a quiet strength that others respect. And if working with instincts makes you powerful on the inside, imagine what happens when you learn how to express them openly, which is where we'll head next, exploring transparency and its power in human connection. Chapter 5. The Role of Transparency in Attraction and Charisma. If there's one secret about attraction that nobody teaches, it's this: transparency is magnetic. People are drawn to those who are real about their desires, their instincts, and even their flaws. You can always tell when someone is hiding behind a mask, especially a nice guy who pretends to have no sexual desire, no anger, no ambition. And you know what? It makes people uncomfortable because deep down, we all feel safer around those who are honest about their human nature. If you own your shadow, if you can speak openly about your passions and still stay grounded, you radiate emotional maturity and real self-empowerment. What's fascinating is that transparency doesn't make you weak. It makes you powerful. When you say, "Yes, I want this," or "Yes, I'm feeling this way," people trust you more, not less. They see you as someone who isn't ruled by fear or anxiety, someone who's done the inner work of individuation. And in relationships, this is everything. How can you form real intimacy if you're always hiding your desires? Think about it. Culture teaches men to hide their sexual desire to seem polite and women to suppress their ambition to seem humble. But all this hiding leads to fake connections, not love. Real connection starts when you dare to be honest. Most nice guys think they'll scare people away if they reveal their true desires. But the opposite is true. When you're real about what you want, you give others permission to be real too. You show emotional honesty, and that creates trust. People are tired of games, tired of fake politeness. What they crave is depth, courage, and humility, the kind that says, "Here I am, with all my passions, fears, and instincts. Take it or leave it." And guess what? When you can show up like that, many will want to take it. Because very few people have the guts to be fully themselves in a world that's obsessed with appearances. So if you've been hiding who you are to be liked, here's the hard truth. It's not working. Pretending you're not ambitious, pretending you don't have sexual desire, pretending you're always nice, people sense that something's off. They might not say it, but they feel it. And instead of being attractive, you become suspicious. Why? Because emotional honesty is the foundation of trust, and without trust, there's no connection. So if you want real charisma, if you want people to feel drawn to you, start by embracing transparency. Say what you want. Own your ego. Let people see your shadow, not in a destructive way, but in a way that shows you're whole. But here's where it gets even deeper, because when you start being transparent about your instincts, you don't just improve your relationships. You start to feel authentic in every part of life. You stop second-guessing yourself, stop living in fear of rejection, and start walking with real confidence. And this kind of authenticity is what leads to true personal growth. But to get there, you need to reconnect with those instincts at a deeper level, to understand them, to listen to them, and to integrate them into who you are. And that's exactly where we'll head next. How instincts are the gateway to finding your real, powerful, authentic self. Chapter 6. Instincts and the Path to Authenticity. If you want to be truly authentic, the first step is to reconnect with your instincts, those raw, natural forces inside you that tell you what you really want. You can't build a real identity if you don't know what drives you. Culture has done a great job of making people feel ashamed of their desires, especially sexual desire, ambition, and even simple self-interest. But here's the truth. Those instincts are not flaws. They are part of your design. They are your compass. And when you ignore them, you feel lost, weak, and disconnected from yourself. But when you embrace them, you find clarity, direction, and real personal growth. Jung knew that embracing your instincts is at the heart of individuation, the journey of becoming whole. You can't reach self-realization by only accepting the parts of yourself that look good on paper. You have to embrace the messy, wild, passionate parts too. Your ego, your shadow, your desire. All of these are pieces of your full self. And when you bring them together, when you stop pretending and start living as you are, that's when real self-empowerment happens. You stop needing other people's approval because you know who you are, and that inner strength radiates in everything you do. And let's be real, people are starving for authenticity. We live in a world filled with fake smiles, fake connections, and fake nice guys who are terrified to admit their real instincts. But when you show up as someone who owns their human nature, who isn't ashamed of passions, fears, and desires, people feel that energy. They trust you. They're drawn to you because you're giving them permission to be real too. And that's not just about relationships. This is about your whole life, your work, your friendships, your dreams. You can't build anything meaningful if you're hiding who you are. Now, here's something practical. If you want to reconnect with your instincts, start by asking yourself what you've been pretending not to want. What desire have you been hiding? What ambition have you been downplaying? And then, here's the brave part. Start moving toward it. Take one small step. Maybe it's having an honest conversation. Maybe it's setting a boundary. Maybe it's going after a goal you've been too scared to chase. This is where personal growth gets real. When you act on what you truly want instead of hiding behind fear or negative self-talk. And when you do this, when you start honoring your instincts, something incredible happens. You begin to feel alive again. You feel powerful. You feel connected to yourself in a way that self-hate and anxiety never allowed. And that energy becomes the fuel for everything else, for building emotional maturity, for creating real relationships, for achieving what matters to you. But of course, when you start walking this path, fear and anxiety will show up. And that's not a bad thing. In fact, those emotions are part of the process. They're signals of growth. And learning to deal with fear is what we're diving into next. Chapter 7. Overcoming Fear and Anxiety. One of the biggest things that holds people back from embracing their instincts and becoming truly authentic is fear. And right behind fear comes anxiety. But here's something few people realize. Fear is not your enemy. It's a message, a signal that you're about to grow, about to step outside the tiny box you've been living in. Every time you deny your desires, avoid your ambition, or suppress your sexual desire, it's often because fear is whispering, "Don't do it. Stay small." But here's the truth. Growth always comes with fear, because growth means leaving behind a version of yourself that feels safe but stuck. The nice guy knows this fear well. He fears rejection, disapproval, and even his own shadow. He fears what will happen if he dares to put himself first. If he embraces self-interest, speaks his mind, or goes after what he really wants. And so he stays trapped in negative self-talk, telling himself he shouldn't want more, shouldn't feel passion, shouldn't have ego. But running from fear only makes it stronger. It feeds the anxiety and deepens the self-hate until life feels like an endless cycle of frustration and regret. And the only way out of this cycle is to face fear head-on and realize that it's actually pointing you toward personal growth. Facing fear means taking action in spite of it. It means doing the thing that scares you, not because you don't feel anxiety, but because what you want is more important than staying safe. Want to break free from self-hate? Start doing things that challenge you. Speak your truth, even if your voice shakes. Go after that career, relationship, or goal, even if you're afraid to fail. Nietzsche said, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." And that's real. Every time you face fear and push through, you build emotional maturity, confidence, and real self-empowerment. You realize that you are stronger than your anxiety and bigger than your shadow. And let's be honest, fear and anxiety are part of everyone's life. The difference between those who grow and those who stay stuck is how they deal with these emotions. Some people let fear define them. Others use it as fuel. You can choose to see fear as a signal that you're on the right path, that you're pushing beyond the limits culture set for you. So next time you feel afraid to set a boundary, to be honest about your desires, or to pursue a big dream, Take that as proof that you're moving toward real, personal growth. Because if it didn't matter, it wouldn't scare you. And here's the kicker. Once you start facing fear and taking action, your anxiety starts to shrink. You gain confidence. You build momentum. And suddenly, things you thought were impossible become natural. You realize that what you feared was never as big as it seemed. That fear was just a wall in your mind. And on the other side of that wall is self-empowerment, passion, and a sense of control over your life. But here's something most people miss. Your passions, even your darkest desires, are part of what give you that power. And learning to spiritualize those passions is the next step in turning your fear into strength. Chapter 8. Spiritualizing the passions. Here's where things get really interesting. Because passions, those raw instincts like anger, envy, and sexual desire, are not obstacles to your personal growth. In fact, when understood properly, they are powerful forces that can fuel your spiritual growth. The secret is not to repress them, but to spiritualize them, to transform that raw energy into something higher. Jung knew this. He taught that individuation requires integrating all parts of ourselves, including the messy ones. Nietzsche, too, believed that embracing your passions gives you the strength to overcome weakness and self-hate. Instead of fighting yourself, you learn to use that fire to build a stronger, fuller self. Take anger, for example. Most nice guys think anger is something bad to avoid. But anger often points to places where your boundaries have been crossed, where you've betrayed your own self-interest. Instead of pretending you're never angry, spiritualizing anger means listening to it and asking, what is this trying to show me? Maybe you need to speak up, set a boundary, or go after something you've been too afraid to claim. The goal isn't to explode. It's to channel that passion into action that protects and empowers you. This is real emotional maturity, and it's how you start turning shadow into strength. Envy is another passion that, when ignored, festers into self-hate and negative self-talk. But if you're brave enough to face your envy, it can teach you what you secretly want, but are too afraid to admit. Maybe you envy people who are confident, successful, or free, and that's showing you what you want for yourself. Instead of denying it, spiritualizing envy means using it as motivation to pursue your own path. It's about turning that uncomfortable emotion into a roadmap for your personal growth. Culture teaches us to be ashamed of these feelings, but emotional honesty means seeing them as teachers, not enemies. Even sexual desire, which so many nice guys suppress out of fear of rejection or being judged, is a vital force that can be transformed into creativity, ambition, and deeper connection. Sexual desire isn't just about pleasure. It's about life energy, the drive to create, to connect, to move forward. Spiritualizing this desire means owning it, respecting it, and channeling it in ways that align with your highest values. Instead of hiding it, you bring it into the light, integrate it into who you are, and let it fuel your personal growth, your self-realization, and your relationships. This is what makes you whole. And when you learn to spiritualize these passions, something powerful happens. You stop fearing yourself. You stop living in anxiety about what's inside you. You start seeing that even your darkest instincts are part of your path to self-empowerment and spiritual growth. This is what separates people who live with quiet self-hate from those who walk with confidence. But here's the next step. Once you've embraced and transformed your passions, how do you use them to drive your life forward? How do you let these forces raise your standards and shape a powerful, ambitious future? That's what we'll explore next. Chapter 9. Raising standards through instincts. Once you've embraced your instincts and learned to spiritualize your passions, there's a next step that most people overlook: using these forces to raise your standards. You see, when you reconnect with your real desires, you realize that you were made for more. More than mediocrity, more than living in fear, more than negative self-talk. Instincts, when integrated, give you the fire to aim higher. Your ambition, your sexual desire, your hunger for respect and freedom. These are the things that can drive you to create a life that reflects your worth. But for that to happen, you must stop settling and start demanding more from yourself and the world around you. Most people lower their standards because they're disconnected from their instincts. They feel fear, anxiety, and self-hate, so they tell themselves, maybe I don't deserve more. But when you embrace your desire and self-interest, you start asking different questions. What kind of life do I really want? What kind of relationships? What kind of work? And suddenly, culture's expectations aren't enough for you anymore. You realize you want something deeper, something real, and you're willing to do the personal growth it takes to get there. This is how emotional maturity and self-empowerment begin to shape a powerful new vision for your future. But here's the thing. Raising your standards doesn't mean sitting around wishing for better things. It means acting like the person you need to become to live at that level. It means facing fear, taking risks, and doing the work. If you want strong relationships, you need to be transparent, emotionally honest, and willing to own your desires. If you want a career that fulfills you, you need to tap into your ambition, embrace your ego, and stop apologizing for wanting more. This is why working with your instincts is so important, because they give you the energy, the drive, and the clarity to actually do something about your life, not just dream about it. And let's be real, when you raise your standards, some people won't like it, especially if they've been benefiting from you playing small, staying the nice guy who never says no. But that's part of the process. You start surrounding yourself with people who respect your self-interest, who appreciate your authenticity, not those who expect you to hide your desires. And here's the beauty of it. As you raise your standards, you raise the quality of your life in every area. Love, work, friendships. You stop living in fear and start living with passion, clarity, and real power. But here's the deeper question. Why do we ever lose this connection to our instincts and standards in the first place? Why does modern culture leave so many people without a real roadmap to becoming strong, grounded individuals? The truth is, for centuries, humans relied on initiation. Real, transformative experiences that force them to confront their fears, passions, and shadow. And in today's world, we've lost that, which is exactly why we need to talk about initiation and how to bring it back into our lives. Chapter 10. The Problem of Modern Society and the Loss of Initiation. One of the biggest reasons people today struggle with self-hate, fear, and anxiety is because modern culture has completely lost the idea of initiation. In ancient times, every society had rituals and challenges that forced individuals to confront their instincts, their passions, and their shadow. These rites of passage were essential to help people grow from boys into men, from girls into women, and from unconscious beings into self-aware, grounded individuals. But today, nothing. People are thrown into adulthood without ever learning how to deal with their desires, sexuality, anger, and ambition. And the result is a society full of people pretending to be nice while secretly battling deep self-loathing. Without initiation, people never truly face their shadow, and so they walk around afraid of their own instincts. They think self-interest is wrong. They fear their own ego. They believe that having sexual desire or ambition makes them bad people. And since no one taught them how to integrate these parts, they either repress them and become nice guys filled with anxiety, or they let them explode in uncontrolled ways, ruining relationships and sabotaging their own lives. Jung knew this. He understood that unless you confront these inner forces consciously, they will take over and control you. And that's why personal growth requires modern people to self-initiate, to create their own path to emotional maturity and self-empowerment. But what does modern initiation look like? It's not about ancient rituals. It's about facing real-life challenges that push you to grow. It's about embracing fear instead of running from it. It's about having hard conversations, owning your desires, setting boundaries, and being emotionally honest even when it's uncomfortable. It's about choosing self-interest when necessary and being willing to upset people who expect you to stay small. True initiation happens every time you act from your authentic self, rather than the mask culture told you to wear. And every time you do that, you grow stronger, clearer, and more in touch with your instincts. What makes this process even harder is that modern society actively discourages initiation. It teaches people to stay soft, passive, and disconnected from their passions. It glorifies the nice guy, the man who never says what he wants, who avoids conflict, and who dies inside to make everyone else comfortable. But inside, that man is filled with self-hate because he knows he's not living his truth. So the real act of rebellion today, the real path to personal growth, is to reclaim initiation, to choose to confront your shadow, your desires, and to walk the path of real emotional maturity, no matter how uncomfortable it is. And here's the thing, once you commit to this path, once you start facing your fears, owning your instincts, and raising your standards, you realize you've been holding back your whole life. You realize how much power, passion, and clarity have been waiting inside you. And as you step into that, you become someone new, not the nice guy who hides and pleases, but a man or woman who lives fully, honestly, and with strength. And that's what makes all the difference. But before we bring everything together, let's step back and see how all these pieces connect to one of the deepest truths about human nature and what it means to embrace your full, authentic self. Conclusion. What part of your shadow are you ready to face first? Now let me ask you, how much longer are you going to hide behind being nice? How many more relationships are you going to ruin because you're too afraid to say what you really want? How many more opportunities will you let pass because your fear and self-hate are louder than your own voice? You've seen now that denying your instincts, your passions, and your shadow only makes them control you from the inside. So what are you going to do about it? Are you ready to start living with emotional honesty? To embrace your ego and desires without shame? To finally own who you are and stop apologizing for it? Because if you're ready to break free from anxiety, negative self-talk, and pretending to be someone you're not, this is your moment. Personal growth doesn't happen by chance. It starts when you say, enough. I'm done hiding. So here's what I want to know. What part of your shadow are you ready to face first? Is it your anger? Your sexual desire? Your ambition? Drop a comment below and let me know. Because if you're brave enough to name it, you're already taking the first step toward real self-empowerment. And if this message hit home, if you're tired of being stuck and you're ready to become someone powerful, real, and authentic, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because we're going to go deeper into how to work with your shadow, how to build emotional maturity, and how to reclaim your life. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming.